This titanoboa, they're estimating about 45 foot long. So he was a big snake. Nothing you want to mess with today. I don't like to mess with the 6-footers we have around our house, let alone something like that. And I know y'all are getting the pythons and stuff in the Everglades now, and I don't want to mess with them. I ain't a big snake fan. But like I say, these were reptiles, so they were trying to learn some new things about them. Now, it says, discuss how scientists figured out, about dinosaurs, how they may have lived and looked like and stuff like that, and how they based their reasoning and stuff on. Well, there's some different stories on that too, because, naturally as they find these bones, they assemble the skeletons, they have them up, everybody's going crazy on them. And one of them they had up in the museum for several years, and one of the paleontologists comes over and said, you got the wrong head on that dinosaur, don't you? And they had been displaying him for a couple of years. But the problem was they had not found many of them yet. They didn't really know how to put them together. You very rarely find one like that. You find a piece here and a piece there. And I guess if you're good at puzzles and know some anatomy for reptiles, you could figure it out. But how do you know what he looks like from a bone and stuff? It's hard to tell. So what they do is they try to find something that's similar to today. But honestly, when you watch movies like Jurassic Park and stuff, just remember most all of this has come from people's minds. They tried to get the facts good as well as we knew them, but there's so much we don't know. How do we know what color they were? We're just now starting to find some skin that's still intact enough that we can tell what it's like. We're starting to see a little pigment on it, so we know it was different colors. But from skin that's been dead for thousands of years, it's not going to look like it was when it was on the living animal. So we're guessing at a lot of it. Something else. You look at bones, well, you look at each one of us. That's not what we look like. We've got cartilage, we've got fat layers and stuff like that on us. If you look at the different skulls of different animals, some of them are just crazy compared to what the animal looks like because of fatty deposits and things like that. Well, that's hard to recreate just from bones. So you can't necessarily tell exactly what they look like. So to me, it's a good idea to think about whenever you're looking at dinosaurs and things like that, just remember that the way they're showing them acting and the way they look, a lot of that is made up. And we're just going to have to wait until we get to heaven one day and ask God how he made them. Now, we probably might get to see what they look like in Eden instead of what they look like probably in the fossil layers that we find. Because chances are they changed a lot whenever sin entered the world. Because you look at T-Rex, what would he have ate before sin? He wouldn't be killing and eating other dinosaurs. So I think just like buzzards and a lot of things like that, I think when sin entered the world, God changed the way some of the animals ate and different things like that because, I appreciate buzzards and ants and things like that when a deer gets hit side of the road, he doesn't lay there for months. They clean it up quick. And when something as big as your house dies, you're going to appreciate something that comes along and cleans it up for you. I've never seen it. Y'all probably haven't either, but have y'all ever saw where the whales die and wash up on shore? I know one here a couple of years back. They loaded it up on a semi-truck, and as they were pulling him through the town, the gases had exploded him up so much, he popped going through town. That town looked awful. But they were scared to leave him on the beach, just scared that it was going to cause a lot of disease. Tourism was a lot of their stuff. They didn't want a rotten whale carcass out there for no telling, but instead they ended up with a rotten whale carcasses all over the town. So I'd hate to see what that cleanup bill was, but it was rough. But I appreciate God making scavengers and things to come along and clean up the sinful world that we had. And some of the dinosaurs, that was their job. You had some dinosaurs like these. Their job was to keep trees underbrushed and things like that. Some of them also, their head went out. They could trim pond banks and all kind of stuff. God makes things for a reason, and we still don't understand completely, like I say, because we're not seeing them. We don't even have little ones of these around today to see what they were like, but we can kind of tell. One thing I thought I read the other day that was kind of interesting is they said, we know dinosaurs didn't eat grass because grass had not evolved yet when dinosaurs were around. Guess what they just found recently? Grass in a dinosaur stomach. God has a way of proving these people wrong. Sometimes I think he's got fossils sitting there waiting for them, and he lets them be discovered at just the right time to show them, y'all really don't know what you talk about yet, Keep looking, keep studying, and maybe you'll figure out what I've done. Well, like I say, there's a lot of different things. Well, like I say, placing these skeletons back together is a pain because you're trying to figure it all out. And what percentage of a skeleton do you have to have for it to be considered a complete fossil? A complete skeleton. Any idea? Nope. Nope. She was going the right direction. 10. That does not make any sense to me. They say if you've got 10% of the fossil, you have a complete fossil. I always thought complete meant 100%. So what they do sometimes on these things, if they've got a certain percentage of it, well, then they take plaster and stuff and make the rest of how they think it should be. And I'm not saying they might not be pretty right because they've studied a lot of this stuff, but still we don't know. Like I say, God throws them some curveballs every now and then. Any idea why T-Rex is considered to have been the king of the dinosaurs? It's supposed to be at the top of the food chain. Now lately, they found some that look like they're probably a lot bigger and probably a lot meaner than he was. So he's really not there anymore. But according to the Pathfinder on it, that's what it is. It probably needs to be updated. I don't know if I want to update that one. I've updated the fossil one for them. And I don't know if they've approved that yet, but I have updated it. But there are other ones that are considered, kings of their species or whatever you want to call it. Albertosaurus, Tarbor, I kill these names. Tarbosaurus Bartar. Which, you see how big he is compared to a man. It's not something you'd want to walk up on out in the woods. He probably could outrun you, although I don't know. But, something about these, and I think it talks about it later, you had dinosaurs that got huge. But who knows what the largest dinosaur egg was? How big was it? Nope, smaller. About the size of a football. It's the largest egg they found. I've got a picture of it a little bit farther on, I think. They all started off small, but I think God developed in them the ability to be able to continue growing and be large. They believe the atmosphere and stuff was different before the flood because a lot of these dinosaurs have a small lung capacity, and they think that the air pressure and stuff was different, so it would allow the oxygen to get into their lungs better. And that would allow them to grow better and stuff. Their body would function and thrive better. Ours would too. And that might be why we could have got that big. Miss White says over twice the height of people alive at her time. So this is 13 and a half foot, so who knows? But it kind of gives you an idea. But like I say, all the dinosaurs started small. Now, do any of y'all know what the average size dinosaur was? Just in general. About the size of a dog or a sheep. Yep. Because you had the big ones, but they were really very few big ones. But you even had a Mousosaurus. They were little. They said a lot of them were the size of a chicken. That's one. As of about 10 years ago, he was one of the smallest ones they had found. So you had a lot of smaller ones. And they said even like the raptors that you see on Jurassic Park, they were not as big as what they show them, they said, for the most part. They were about the size of our deer down here. So it might not be as mean as what they showed them. How do we know? You know, we got an alligator today. We don't see him running down stuff and stuff like they do all these dinosaurs. I'm not saying he couldn't outrun me short distance, because I've seen him outrun deer within about 30 foot. But beyond that, they just don't have it. And we don't know. These may have been about the same way. You know, a lot of your meat-eating dinosaurs, I think, were scavengers. The Lord created them to do stuff. I'm not saying some of them were not predators, but I think for the most part, a lot of them were just there to clean up things. The Allosaurus was another one. Like I say, I like how they put the man beside it, just to kind of give you an idea. But like I say, once again, the coloring and stuff, we don't know. This is a newer one they found that was a good size, and he's the Oklahoma State dinosaur. Let's see. You know, why did dinosaurs lay eggs? Because they're reptiles. Reptiles lay eggs. You know, so that's the reason they're given the honor. This is an actual nest of dinosaur eggs. They find them fairly regular. I'm trying to remember, they found like a big area that had a bunch of nests with the adults still on them, and which showed that they were trying to protect their eggs when something buried them. You know, and if we think about evolution, you know, what is it they say? We get an inch of topsoil every 100 years in some places. They sat there a long time to get covered up, you know, by evolutionary standards. Something was there to bury them. And they pretty much admitted that most all those type of events were caused by a flood. Evolution admits that. They'll tell you it wasn't a worldwide flood. You know, now how we get petrified shells up on the top of Mount Everest, and that was a local flood, I've not figured that out. So they've got reasons, but, you know, you have to believe in a lot of stuff to do it. But there's the largest dinosaur egg they found so far. So it's not huge. You know, to think about something the size of your house started something small like that is interesting. They are, like I say, starting to find skin. They're starting to find soft tissues. They found collagen. They found red blood cells. They're starting to find the connective tissues, like the tendons and things like that. They're starting to find DNA markers in some of this. And naturally, they can't take this as evidence that they've only been in the ground a couple of thousand years, because they know these things are 50 million years old, so now they're trying to figure out how this soft tissue could have lasted that long. And there's no way it can. I mean, it's amazing it's lasted a couple of thousand years. You know, God let that happen probably so we could learn more about them. But, you know, millions of years just doesn't work. There's too many compounds and stuff in there that can hurt this stuff and destroy it. So it's real interesting to see what they're starting to find now in some of it. Now, this picture's going around saying this is, you know, a dinosaur foot they found. Well, it's been proven it's not, but it's a bird. But still, they're saying this is a good possibility of what some of the dinosaurs' feet look like on some of them, on some of the smaller ones. I think that's the one that they were talking about. But like I say, it gives you an idea of what it may have looked like, because, you know, some of the structure and stuff like that of the bones is similar, because they always say that birds come from dinosaurs or dinosaurs come from birds. I guess it's dinosaurs, or birds come from dinosaurs. But it's amazing they find them both in the fossil record in the same layers. But it makes sense. They probably would have been like that because they were covered with scales just like a lot of your bird's feet are. So it gives you an idea of what it may have looked like. Sauropodmorphs. These are some of your big ones, like I say, like your Brontosaurus and different ones like that. I've seen leg bones of some of these, and they're as tall as I am and about this big around. They're huge. I've seen footprints of these in riverbeds, and look like they're 5 or 6 foot in diameter. Imagine what kind of creature it would take to walk and to be able to move bones and stuff that size. You wouldn't want your foot under his, or you wouldn't want to be under that. I mean, but the Lord made animals to be able to be that big. You know, what always kind of gets me is they say, well, men never could be this big, his body couldn't do it. But the Lord made something that big that his body could do it. God can do it if he wants to. I think that we're not evolving, we're devolving. And our bodies probably could have supported something like that at one time. But the sauropod means lizard-footed form. They're primarily bipedal. Some of them are quadrupedal, which means they have 4 feet. But just huge dinosaurs. You see, a man here versus the size of them. If I remember right, they recently found one even larger than the ones you see here. Yeah, huge. You don't know how in the world they could walk and stuff, but the Lord made it where they could. It makes you wonder how much plant material something that size would eat in a day. It would have to take a lot, you would think, because you look at what an elephant eats during a day, or a buffalo. What is it? They told us, do you remember how many pounds they said a buffalo could eat in a day of grass? I mean, it was just a huge number. So something like that would have to have a lot of grazing, but they believed before the flood, once again with the atmosphere, the vegetation would just grow like crazy. So the Lord made stuff like this. And there's a lot of different ones. I mean, look at the size of this one compared to the guy. If he was able to pick his head up, he could trim our trees here, no problem. And this is different families. I mean, there's tons of them. Now, why are marine and flying reptiles not considered dinosaurs? So you've probably always thought they were, but this or this would not have been a dinosaur. Do you know what you have to be a dinosaur? You have to permanently live on the land. You have to be terrestrial. So naturally these flew, so they were in the air a lot of times. Probably made on the same day as the birds. And then these spent most of their life in the water. Probably made on the same day as fish. We don't think of dinosaurs when we think about the days of creation. But God made them. Now, I have had some Adventists tell me, oh, we don't talk about dinosaurs. Satan created them. Well, can Satan create anything? Now, I'm not saying Satan may not have inspired man to maybe breed them or maybe even genetically modify them. I'm not saying he couldn't have done that. Miss White talks about amalgamation. So that may have been some of that. A lot of people said that that's why they didn't come over on the ark. Well, I think some of them probably did. But I think God knew too that if we had less oxygen and pressure and stuff like we do now, that these large ones couldn't survive. And also, if these got a mean streak in them, we couldn't do much about them. We could now, I guess we got guns big enough. But I mean, if you look, have y'all ever saw what kind of damage an elephant can do whenever he gets upset? I mean, he'll go through and destroy a whole village and kill people. That thing makes an elephant look tiny. I wouldn't want to get on his bad side. And you take an animal that's docile, and if he gets sick or gets hurt, that can change his whole attitude. And I think God maybe as a blessing didn't let those come over on the ark and grow large like that. Now, I do think you had some. A lot of people believe that maybe the dragons that the knights went and slayed and stuff like that could have been smaller dinosaurs that were given a problem. Because, I mean, heck, around here back in the 1800s, if you had an ornery dinosaur, gator come up and bother you, well, the community got together and took care of the gator. So we were still doing that same stuff. But I think that's what they were doing back then. There's a lot of stories, and there's a lot of different things. Supposedly, the last 100 years, we've started figuring out what dinosaurs look like. But the people down in Peru knew what they looked like, 1,500 years ago. Because they found these in the burial mounds. And if you get up here and look at this one, he's got circles on his skin. Well, we recently found some dinosaur skin with circles on it. So I think they saw it. The same way with, there are some, see if I can get that to stand up. You go out west and stuff, there are the the wall art that the Indians drew of these. And they find the bones out there. So they may have saw them when they were still alive. We don't know. There are reports of small ones in, Papua New Guinea, attacking fishermen. Yeah, and there's another report of one of them in Africa actually going up and digging up a dead body. Said some of the remote tribes said, yeah, they told what the name of it was. Said they love dead, rotten flesh.
If I remember correctly, the locals didn't know how to communicate what had happened, so they were given a book of flying creatures, and they were supposed to identify based on the picture and they pointed that book.
Yep. Well, I don't remember the name, but they said there was one of the guys from over there. I think he came over here as a professional basketball player. And somebody showed him a picture and said, yeah, we got those back home. That's called so-and-so, you know. He said, you don't hardly ever see them, but we've seen them before. I mean, some of these areas are so remote, people haven't even been out there. There still may be some stuff. My kids used to kind of not like it because I'd talk about stuff. I said, listen, it wouldn't surprise me if there's not any left, but there's so much stuff we haven't seen yet. There may still be a few things like that undiscovered. I mean, the panda bear hadn't been long discovered. Where did they find him, in the 60s or something like that? We're still finding tons of stuff in the ocean every day. You know, so we don't know. If we get in the Congo and the Amazon a little bit more, we might find some different things that we don't know about. They're finding plants that they claimed were extinct when the dinosaurs were extinct millions of years ago, and we're finding them still alive. They're just rarer now than they used to be. So like I say, there's a lot of these different types of dinosaurs. We just did this one. So like I say, dinosaurs are properly the ones that are terrestrial, which means that they're on there. There are some other things. The terrestrial have stronger ankle and knee joints, which, I mean, naturally they would need. If you live in the water all the time, you're not going to be walking. You know, you might have something you can walk on, but if you walk in the water, you're not going to need it developed as much as if you're walking on land. So just different flying reptiles. I'm not sure if I got one, but here's one of the Hydrotheosaurus. You know, he's pretty good size. That's something similar like that, what they always claim the Loch Ness Monster might have been. There's another one at Lake Champlain, up I think in the edge of Canada or wherever. It might be in the U.S. Actually, a couple of towns north of us, there's one at a little city called Darien up there that they claim they saw in the river out there. Who knows? There was one off Pensacola that I think supposedly killed somebody. You know, but we don't have the carcass, we don't have the bones, all we have are stories. You know, so they might have seen something, they might have been so terrified they thought they saw something. Our mind can do some crazy things when we get scared. So who knows? We find a tooth or something with blood still on it, we'll have something. But it's interesting to think about. You got Photoshop pictures, you know, different things like that. If you're doing the honor, you'll need to make a diagram later of the food chain. You know, so if once again, Tyrannosaurus was supposed to be at the top of the food chain, and then you had all of them below him. Like I say, this is completely changed right now. I think they said they found one of these ankylosauruses inside of a T-Rex's stomach, a baby one. So they knew he ate those. But they said that he might have ate one that was dead, but they said those things there, you didn't want to mess with them. I forget how heavy the ball on the end of their tail was, but they said it'd be like a piece of steel hitting you. Said he could tear stuff all to pieces. And once again, what did he look like in Eden? He didn't need armor plating and all this stuff in the Garden of Eden. What was going to bother him? You know, but after sin entered the world, after you may have had aggressive dinosaurs, God made him to where he would survive. They found one similar to this recently that is really preserved very well. I think National Geographic has some stuff on it. And his face, and you can even see kind of his eyes and everything very well. And they were trying to figure out if they could maybe do some kind of an X-ray or something to where they could see if he still had his organs intact and stuff like that, because they didn't really want to slice him open. He was preserved so well. So it would be interesting to see, you know, in years to come, because sometimes that takes a while to do. You know, but the what do you call it? the X-ray and the different things like that they use has gotten so much better. I know, I'm trying to remember, I think in the late 80s, they found I think they said it was a lead tablet on one of the mountains over in Israel. And they didn't quite figure out what it was, but recently they've had something that they could scan it. They said it was so delicate, if they took it apart, it would fall apart. So they've scanned it, and they've pretty much figured out when the children of Israel went into the Promised Land, they went on one mountain and made an offering of blessing, but they went on another mountain and made an offering of a curse. And that was the scroll where they wrote the curse and buried it at the altar. So they actually found that. And just recently they figured out that's what it was. So they found the altar and everything. So it's really interesting, a lot of the advances that they're doing in archaeology. So here's a sauropod. Like I say, you've got so many different shapes and sizes, and a theropod. And that's got part of a vertebrae from one of those over here. So there's a lot of interesting things, but you don't find a whole lot of the bones. I've got part of a frill section of one of those at the house. I did not bring it today. It's pretty fragile. An Ankylosaurus again. I think I've got a tooth from one of them over here. It's a small one. Plesiosaur, pterosaur. So the Pathfinders can do some more research as a group and learn some more about some different dinosaurs. So where does the Bible speak about creation of reptiles? Like I say, we don't think about dinosaurs being made at creation. But in Genesis, it said, let the water teem with living creatures. Well, if this one was living in the water, that was the day God would have made him on. And then it says, let the land produce the living creatures. Well, that would include dinosaurs. God made them with all the other animals. I have had people tell me, I thought dinosaurs were not real. Well, they are. We find evidence all the time. Like I say, I've got actual bones that they existed. We actually find tracks, and a lot of people say these are fake, but we found tracks where people have walked with dinosaurs. This is a famous one. It's called the Delt track. But a girl was walking and a dinosaur come behind her and stepped his foot in her track. Just like trilobites. They said trilobites was one of the first things to evolve, and they died out long before man was alive. But I know they found 2 footprints where they stepped on one. And one of them was wearing shoes. So he probably wasn't a caveman. This stuff was around. Now, he was supposed to be a simple little organism, but he had the most complex eye of about any creature out there. So most of him was simple and evolved quick because he was simple, but he had the most complex eye out there. I don't know how evolution does that. That's not how it's supposed to work. Let's see. Evolution, like we talked about, they think that all this stuff evolved steps at the time. We get bombarded with that every day. And I think that's why it's important for us to learn about it, so we can talk to our kids about this. Tell them, these are animals God created. These were not accidents. These are not things that slowly evolved. God created them for a purpose. And for some reason, most of them aren't around anymore. Either they couldn't survive in today's world, or, we have tons of animals going extinct right now. These are no different. Look at the alligators. They were on protected lists and stuff forever because we had just about decimated them. They've come back. Well, for a dinosaur to be a dinosaur, he has to be extinct. If the alligator had been extinct, he probably would have been considered a dinosaur. So we do still have things like this around. So it's kind of the period of timeline. Now, how about the theories of how the dinosaur disappeared? How many of y'all have heard all the different theories? The most famous one is asteroid impact. But you have a lot of reptiles that are still alive today. Same body functions and everything as a dinosaur. Why didn't they go extinct? A lot of people do believe aliens killed them. Some of them do believe that there was too much smoke in the atmosphere. There are some that actually believe that they passed so much gas that it changed the environment so much it killed them off. That is a theory, believe it or not. Climate change, like I say, that's definitely one. That's a real popular one today, of us going extinct one day. You know, basically creationists believe dinosaurs were created on the sixth day of the creation week with the other land animals, and most of them died during the flood. You know, it's not something that's real hard. If we believe the flood happened, then that is a good reason, because why would they need to be on the ark with large animals like that? Now, if the ones that Noah probably took, why would he take a huge one? You're going to take a young one that still has a long breeding age left and stuff. You don't have to take a big one. But there are evidences that maybe they were alive after the flood. Like I say, there's different stories. I think this is on a temple in Cambodia. It's King George or what is it? Sir George and the Dragon, I think it was. And there's a lot of different stories with pictures that show what they would have looked like. Possibly in the Bible, when it talks about a dragon, it's probably talking about something similar to a dinosaur. Or in Job, you have Behemoth or Leviathan. Both of those sound a lot like a dinosaur. Your Bible will translate them different, but they don't sound like what the Bible's talking about. Evidences we can point to: death because of flood. Well, for starters, most all the fossils we find were buried by water. You know, that makes sense to me. So one other thing, you know, for pathfinders can do is they need to choose a dinosaur and research it and try to figure out what they may have ate, their nesting habits and things like that. Down here in Florida, supposedly y'all found no dinosaur fossils down here. It's one of the few states that they have not found any. So y'all have to move to another state to find a dinosaur, I guess. But, like I say, once again, an alligator and stuff, to me, is kind of the same thing. You're supposed to identify some images of dinosaurs and different things. Like I say, if you want to do the honor, you can do that later. But, like I say, dinosaurs are very interesting. I know there was a creationist a while back, said he went to a church and the pastor said, "Oh, we don't need to talk about dinosaurs, you know, that's evolution stuff." He said, "No." He said, "Those are evangelist lizards. We can go talk about them. Kids will listen about those." So, you know, and they teach you about God. You know, it's things that we can learn. We don't need to be scared of talking about dinosaurs. We don't need to be scared of talking to an evolutionist. We just need to know things enough to where we can have a conversation with them. We don't need to have a debate. We don't need to argue. We need to know what they believe so that we can talk to them about what we believe. And honestly, you have to have more faith in evolution to believe it than we have to believe that there was actually a God. You know, at least I know at one time my friend's dad was doing a debate, and one of the professors made fun at him. He said, "You believe all the dogs alive come from just two dogs, all the different breeds we have." He said, "Well, you believe they come from a rock." You know, and it's true. And he used to use that on a regular basis. You know, y'all believe we come from a rock. So he had a professor come one day, she was mad. She said, "We don't believe we come from rocks." He said, "Well, where do you believe you come from?" She said, "A macromolecule." He said, "Well, where did that come from?" She said, "Well, there's a primordial soup, and the elements come together and done that." He said, "Well, where did that come from?" She said, "Well, over millions of years, it rained on the mountains and it eroded the rocks." And said she turned around and walked off because she figured out, I guess I do believe we come from rocks. Like I say, at least we start with something alive. And even the evolutionists admit that you can put all the minerals and everything in there to create life, but we can't create life. God has to give it the spark. So I think it's good for us to study about this stuff. Life is a miracle. And it's even more of a miracle we got a God that cared enough to spend the time on us instead of just striking us from existence and starting all over again. He didn't have to save anybody in the flood. Granted, it was part of his plan because he wanted to show the universe his love. And where a stage for the whole universe to watch this play out and how bad sin is. I guess we can at least serve as a bad example. But God is using us to show his love. Not only is he showing it to us, but he's letting the whole universe see how much he cares about us. And y'all know, the ones of y'all that have heard me talk before, you've heard me talking about how many other suns and galaxies and all that. We know Miss White talks about God made other worlds. He's wasted his time to come down here for just us. Well, she said none of the rest of them fell. It was just us. That makes us awful special. So any questions on dinosaurs? I'll do my best if y'all have any. Y'all are more than welcome to come up and look at some of the fossils, and brought a bunch of rocks. We've started collecting a lot of them. A lot of neat stuff. I've got one smoky quartz over there. It's still got the water in it. It was trapped when it was created. It's hard to see, but it's still in there. God has so many secrets locked up for us. I'm amazed at the things that are probably under our feet that we know nothing about.
Yeah, I've got a question. I heard a gentleman many years ago, he came to Fort Myers Church, and he lived near D.C., and in his property they would find stuff, that dinosaur stuff.
Yeah.
So he allowed them to dig and pick up things, and he didn't believe that they were created because, he says, for instance, like on T-Rex, it didn't seem like his arms or his hands really could do much.
Doesn't make any sense.
Right, they really didn't, they weren't very functional.
Right.
And so he said that kind of seems like somebody was playing around with something. And so he was of the idea. And my question is, are there any other features that seem useless to us, other than, like, say, the hands on T-Rex?
That's probably the one that stands out the most, because a lot of those other type dinosaurs had longer arms, and they would squat down and use their legs probably to move, but they might stand upright too. I mean, we have a lot of mammals that even do that type of stuff today. But like you say, somebody could have been playing around with them, and that was just one of the mutations that messed up. But apparently they could survive with it. You get to thinking about it. Birds have wings, but they don't have hands up there, and they still do fine. We had a bird only had one leg. She did great. She would scoot around on the floor and go anywhere you walk, just like a regular bird, just hopping on one foot. She was funny, she'd figured out she could put her beak down and steady herself with it, and she could hop with that other foot. She'd just slide right along and go like crazy. And so, I mean, if man did that and messed them up, they can still do it. I mean, how many three-legged dogs? I've even saw some two-legged dogs. They can't go real far, but they survive. But I wouldn't doubt if man was playing around with a lot of that stuff. I really think that they were smart as we are, if not maybe more before the flood. And you got to think about it. Miss White talks about that Adam and Eve could actually see into the cells of the plant and stuff. And she even talks about that they could converse with the plants. And I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know if they could actually talk to them. I don't know if they could ask to see something and God made it where they could. I don't know what that means. But if you can see all that stuff, you understand how it works, and you may know how to manipulate it. And we don't know at what level God may have allowed Satan to influence. A lot of people said, that they actually worked with angels face to face to do a lot of this stuff. I don't know if I believe that, because I don't know that God would let evil angels go in cahoots with man like that. But I think that they were allowed to maybe inspire, and help maybe lead to different things. We know Satan can give us suggestions in our mind and stuff to do things. So we never know where he may have led them to do stuff like this. I mean, look at what we've done just by crossbreeding stuff without even the genetic manipulation we do. You know, we've took a wolf and turned it into a chihuahua. You know, I don't know what we've accomplished with that. You know, the dog has lost so much information by doing that, it can never be bred back into something that's a good, viable dog because, I mean, Chihuahuas and dogs like that, I mean, I like the Boston Terriers. They have tons of health problems because you've interbred them so much. And when we start doing that, we lose stuff, just like the corn and stuff that we do. We're losing a lot of the nutrients and stuff because we're trying to genetically breed it to be insect resistant or something like that. You know, the more you play with what God created, the more you mess it up. He put it that way for a reason. And I think the dinosaurs, he may be something that we messed up. And Miss White even talks about amalgamation after the flood. So, it's interesting.
I know they're trying to get the Chinese are paying good money for any, because the permafrost is thawing out.
Yep.
In the poles, right? And people working up there, they're getting good money for anything that comes from the woolly mammoth.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Chinese, they want to bring that back to the Asian
Right.
elephant. And so they want to get some information to try to clone the woolly mammoth.
And they may be able to do it if they get enough viable information to do that. Because if you inject some of that into DNA, it's not like working with living tissue. It's a little bit different. You're just kind of putting a program in it that I don't understand because of how complicated God made it. But they know enough. The problem is they might know enough to get themselves in trouble with it. You know, you get to thinking about, I know we've done it for years, but you start playing with the viruses and stuff. What happens if they mess it up a little bit to where we can't find something to kill it? You know, just, I don't know. You start playing God and you start messing up because he knows better than we do. And the world's winding down anyway. We don't need to help it. And I think we're doing a good job at helping unwind the clock right now. I don't think it's going to be long before the Lord comes. Well, if there's no other questions, or we'll close with prayer. And like I say, if y'all want to come up and look at some of this stuff, and we'll talk about some stuff. I appreciate y'all coming tonight. I hope it was interesting to y'all. Like I say, dinosaurs are interesting when we look at them from the way that God created them, and not that there's some crazy thing that just evolved on its own. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Father, thank you for bringing us here today. Thank you for the love that you've shown us. Father, thank you for the wonderful things you've created in this world for us to enjoy, Father. We know that's why you made this world, was for us to be able to inhabit it and for it to be a place that you could come and spend time with us. Father, please help us to all strive to live a life to where one day we can experience that with you again. We thank you for the blessings that you've given us, and thank you for this Sabbath day. In your name, amen.